All right, everyone, welcome to the live desktop. So this is my actual desktop on my machine, and what you're looking at right now is a split view between TextMate over here, which is my primary text editor, and Chrome, which is my primary development browser. So Chrome is Google's browser. It's based on the WebKit browser architecture, very similar to Safari. Actually, both are built off of the same rendering engine. So this is my preferred browser to use. It to me has the least amount of idiosyncrasies. It generally works all the time and isn't very buggy, and it's kept up to date. So most of the examples I'm going to be doing are going to be in Chrome or Safari. If you're not going to use either of those, I highly recommend using Firefox, and I would recommend staying away from Internet Explorer if you can. All versions, that includes 7 through 9, which are the current versions being used. If you're on a Windows machine, please download Chrome or Firefox for your development. It will make your life a lot easier. Later on in the semester, we're going to discuss using or doing browser testing for other browsers and compatibility modes with Internet Explorer and things like that. But for right now, so that we can make some good progress, we need to just ignore Internet Explorer. We're going to kind of pretend that it doesn't exist at this point. But that's a little off track. That's besides the point. So this is my primary development environment, and I'm also going to flip over to the terminal window. So you're going to see this a lot coming up throughout the semester, basically just a big black screen. And this is where I'm going to be entering terminal commands. And you can see up here, we'll just list all. We're in our current working directory, so there's nothing in there. But this is a place that you guys are going to have to get comfortable with. I'm not going to spend a ton of time going over how to navigate through the terminal. You'll kind of pick up things as you watch me, and maybe in the show notes below I can put some additional help if you're not familiar with the terminal. But on a Mac, it's just the terminal application. I use a piece of software called iTerm, which is just it accesses the same underlying terminal system, but it's just a slightly different interface, and that will. And that's going to act as our main terminal window. So if you see me slide through here and open up anything, that's what I was doing there. So let's jump back out to the main browser and to the text editor. And first things first, before we get started on this, you need to set up a GitHub account. So if you don't have a GitHub account, create one now. You can just go to github.com and follow the links to sign up a new account. And as soon as you do that, then you can kind of pick up where we are. You'll also need to have Git installed on your machine. And those are pretty easy installers. They're just one-click installers, and I've provided a link below for Mac and Windows. So depending on your operating system, make sure you have Git installed. And you'll know that Git is installed because you'll have to use the Git command. So if you type git and something happens, that's good. You can also type git -- version, and you should see a git version printout. And the current version that I'm running on is git version 1.7.10.2. But any recent version will work just fine. So at this point, before we set up our local repository, we're going to set up a new repository on GitHub. And it's important to keep these two things separate because they really are. Your repository is going to live both in GitHub and locally on your machine, and you're going to keep the two synced. So when I access your files, I'm going to be pulling them off of GitHub's repository, not your local computer. So it's important to make that distinction, and important to know that you work locally, you commit locally, and then you send your changes up to the server once they're committed. And you'll kind of see how that whole workflow works here in just a sec. So on GitHub, if you're at your main profile page, you can come over here and click New Repository. And make sure you're the owner and give your repository a name. We'll go 349. And keep it public. Private repos you have to pay for. We're going to keep ours public, which means anyone on the internet can see your code. And I'm not really concerned about people stealing your work or things like that. We want to keep this public so that I can get at it, and also so that it's easy for me to get in there and help you guys figure out what's going on with your code if you're having problems. So we want to leave that as public. You can add a description if you like. And you do not need to put a README. Most new software projects should have a README, but that's not necessary right here. It just adds a little extra functionality to GitHub. You can leave this add.gitignore none. We're not going to get into that quite yet either. So all you have to do is click Create Repository, and GitHub will create this for you. So there is once you have that part set up, they're going to give you instructions on how to set up your first repository and commit it to GitHub. So if you can see here, they've given us some instructions, and let me just go through them real quick. So first they're going to have us create a README file, and then they're going to have us create a new GitHub repository. We're going to add that file to the repository, and we're going to commit it. And then what we're going to do is we are going to add GitHub as a remote, and I'll explain that more a little bit later, but basically what a remote is it's kind of a remote version of your repository. It's a place where you can keep a copy of your repository, and GitHub is going to act as our remote, and then we're going to go ahead and push that to our GitHub repository. So let's just copy this line because I'm going to need to remember that, and let's flip back over to our terminal. And you can see right now that we don't have any files in our directory. It's empty. So we need to add some files. So Git likes us to add a README file, and we'll do readme.md. .md is usually a markdown file, which is a text version of an HTML file. We will also get into that later when we discuss content management systems. But for the time being, just do touch readme.md. And remember, this is also on a Mac, and that will create a new README file, and you can see it right there. So the next thing we want to do is we want to initialize a new repository inside of this directory. So we can go git init, and you can see here that Git has initialized an empty Git repository in my home directory desktop dev env. So this dev env that I have locally, and it might even be better if you name that the same as your Git repository, just so you don't get confused. It doesn't matter what you name the directories, but it helps keep things a little more consistent for you. So now we have a new Git repository here, but we haven't added anything to it. And you can check that by using the git status command. So git status will print out the current status of the repository. And what you can see here is that we have under the area of untracked files, we have the readme.md, which means this file is not currently being tracked by Git. So in order for us to take advantage of what Git has to offer, we have to tell it about our new files. So what we can do is we can go git add and then the name of the file. So git add readme.md. And nothing will happen, but if you type git status, you should now see that under changes to be committed, you have a new file, readme.md. Now, if you had lots of files that you needed to add, you could also just type git add dot or git add star, and it will add all the current files in the directory. So now that we have a file in our repository ready to be committed, let's set up a few other things. Let's commit this actually. So let's jump back out to our text editor, and now you can see the README file is in there. We'll open it up, and I'll just give it a header, and we'll save that. So very simple, just added one line and saved it, and now we're going to jump back into iTerminal, and we're going to type git status again. And what you can see now is that under changes not staged for commit, you see there's been a modification to readme.md. So if we want those modifications to be included in the commit, we have to add it again. So we have to do git add readme.md. And then if we do a git status, we can see that our new file, readme.md, is staged and ready to commit. So that's good. So now let's commit it. Let's get this thing into the repository. Let's type git commit. And then you always want to supply a message. So git commit -m, and then what we can do here is just put initial commit as our message. And the message just helps us remember what it is we did and changed in this particular commit. So now if we hit enter, we should see the confirmation that our commit happened. And if we type git status, we should show nothing on our master branch. And the master branch is just the current branch, the default branch that we're working with. But we'll get more into branching later on the semester as we get into more advanced Git topics. So we're all set. Basically what we've done is we've created a new Git repository, we've added a file, and then we've committed that file to the repository. But up until this point, all of our files are only living locally on our computer. So this file and this repository are all still local. They haven't made it up to GitHub yet because we haven't pushed them there. And that's where this git remote add origin comes in. So if we hop back over to our terminal window, and then we type git remote add origin, and then paste in the URL to our GitHub repository, now our local Git knows about this origin, this other remote on GitHub, and now we can push our code to that. And we can do that by typing git push origin master. And what this is doing is we are pushing our code to origin, which we just created up here, the origin remote, and we're going to push our master branch because that is currently the default and it's actually currently the only branch we have. So if I do that, it's going to ask me for my username. If you haven't set this up before, it may ask you for your GitHub username. So no big deal there. And then password. And there we go. So now you can see that now you can see from the printout here that we've pushed that up to our GitHub account using the git push origin master command. So now if we hop back over to GitHub and we refresh this repository, we should see our code there. And there you have it. There's our README, and there is the file we added. So now we have a local repository and a remote repository on GitHub that are synced and they're linked together. So now when we go through and add new files, so say our index.html file, I really should save my Git credentials. I don't know why those aren't currently saving. There we go. We've just pushed another version up. And if we go back to Chrome and refresh, I should see that index file there. So there we go. That is version control in a nutshell. And the cool thing about this is once you've done this, now I can come to your repository and I can check it out. I can either download a zip file of all of your assignments, or I can just sync my local repository with yours. So for instance, if I was tracking your repository, I could just type git pull origin master. So it's the opposite of push. I'm not pushing code up, I'm pulling it down. But I can pull your repository down onto my local computer, and any changes that you've made, I'll automatically get. So it makes sending and interacting with me as the instructor and with you as the student much, much easier. So that is my development environment in a nutshell. And once again, just a quick recap. We have TextMate, which is my preferred text editor of choice. In the show notes, you'll see a list of other text editors for both the Mac and the PC. There's free and pay versions, so I encourage you guys to check them out and use the one that really works best for you. My browser is Chrome. I use it because it's not very buggy, very standards compliant, and it renders sites properly, in my opinion. And then we have Git. And Git does all of our source control management, and it allows you guys to get code and files to me very easily and allows us to share and collaborate on what it is you're doing. And last but not least, GitHub, which is the free service that we're going to use to kind of mesh up all this collaboration and for you guys to get your stuff rolling. So one last bit of administrative information here on this one. This is how you guys are going to be turning in your assignments. So you're going to want to create this repository, TC349, and then what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to create directories within that for each week. So if we come back out now, you can see you should organize everything into week 1, and then all your files and projects and assignments will go there, and you can commit that as well. And just like this, just like we did standard files, you can also commit directories with files in them. So we can do git add. We need to do git add star. There we go, new file test.html. And then if we go git commit m test, all right. And now you can see here that I'll have everything nicely organized into folders. So I'm not really particular on how you organize your assignments, but they have to be in some kind of weekly organized fashion. Otherwise, I won't ever be able to find anything. So that was just a little bit of administration. And in the next video, we're going to kind of bring all this together and create a really quick and dirty website. And then we're gonna go from there. See you guys soon.